Welcome to my channel. My name is Rosica and this is the Midnight Reader. I'm in the post-migraine haze, so I'm not feeling the best, but we're gonna work through it. Nothing coffee can't fix, we hope. Because it's a new year, it's the time of New Year's resolutions. So I thought it might be a good time to talk about how to read more books and how I went from reading about 0 books a year to reading 106 books. In the beginning, i.e. 2016, the year that time began, I read a whopping 0 books for the entire year. And that was not unusual for me. At the time, I was averaging 0 to 2 books a year. The following year, I just kind of snapped. Like, I was just really upset that I hadn't read anything at all. And I was someone who really identified as being a reader. It didn't seem like I could do that without reading something. And I read 1 book per month for a total of 12 per year. I did that in 2017 and 2018. And that was not easy for me to do. Like, I really had to work at it. In 2019, I read 25 books. In 2020, I hit 60. And in 2021, I hit 106. So how did I do that? Exactly, because if you had told me in 2016 that I would be reading 106 books in 5 years, I would have laughed in your face. Because at the time, reading 12 books the next year sounded impossible. So how did I do it, and how can you maybe do it too? So there's no magic solution, okay? This isn't Vegas. I can't snap and have the magic happen, okay? There's a little bit of work you're gonna have to do besides just reading the books. If your goal is to read more than you have been, here's the 3 steps that worked for me. 1, ask yourself why you want to read more books. Seriously, have a little mini self-conversation. Because if you're gonna stick to it, you actually need a reason, because you're going to want to quit. And when you want to quit, if you don't know why you wanted to do it in the first place, you're gonna quit. If your reason is something kind of weak, like it sounds cool, it's probably not gonna get you super far. For me, the reason I wanted to read more books was I was sick of the amount of time that I was spending absorbing content that didn't make me feel good. This would be like hours spent scrolling on my phone. This would be hours of YouTube videos. This would be hours of TV shows. And I just hated how I was spending my time. It felt like I was trying to fill every waking moment with content, which I think a lot of people can relate to. And it was the type of content that was junk. It was shopping because there were sales in my email. And I wouldn't even buy anything. I would just spend 2 hours going through an entire website to decide that I didn't want to buy anything. So I wanted to take in content that didn't make me feel crap about myself. For me, that's books. Even bad reading books that I, looked down my nose at because I thought they were kind of trashy or junk. Even bad reading didn't make me feel bad about myself, because there's a level of focus you have to have taking in a book that you don't need for scrolling through your phone or reading a news article. I wanted to spend time taking in content that didn't feel like a waste of time. So that was my reason. And yours can be whatever you want it to be, but make it something that when you want to quit is something that will stop you from quitting. Number 2, identify your barriers to reading more books. This was the one that I struggled with for a while. My barriers to reading are cost and space. I move a lot, having to pack hundreds of books into boxes, and that box is really fucking heavy. And you have to explain to your significant other why exactly you needed to haul around 300 books that you haven't touched in like 5 years. It doesn't make you feel great about owning books. So every time I moved, I would say to myself, well, I don't want to add more. I was trying to downsize the amount of books that I owned. So it didn't make sense for me to buy books. And I also felt extraordinarily guilty about buying a book that was 25 bucks. 30 bucks, and then reading it, deciding it wasn't meaningful to me, and giving it away because it felt like I wasted that money. So that put a lot of pressure on my reading, because if I was going to read a book, then it needed to be the best book ever. It needed to be something that was definitely going to stay on my bookshelf that would have enough personal value to me that would be worth lugging it around. That didn't work, by the way. You can't anticipate which books are going to be meaningful for you. That's not how reading works. So I tried something else, which was buying books secondhand. That's the 2 years where I started reading 12 books a year. I was buying pretty much all my books secondhand. And there was like a fun finding treasure aspect to that. And two, if I didn't like the book, or if I didn't even wind up reading it, because I'm a flaky ass mood reader, I felt significantly less guilty about giving away a book that cost $1 versus giving away a book that cost me $25 if I hadn't read it. And that helped a little bit. It was still spending money and I still felt guilty about it. So then, after years of harping and me saying no, my husband just bought me a Kindle. And I was super against Kindles. I didn't like reading books on e-readers, or I thought I didn't. He told me about an app called Libby, which is a library card app. So I set that up, and then I had access to thousands of ebooks and audiobooks for free. And that's how my reading went from 12 books a year to 25 to 60. Because all of a sudden I had access to all these books that I didn't have to lug around with me, that were not costing me money. I don't really know if Libby is available in other countries, but in the US, there's an app called Libby. It's a free app you can get from the App Store for Apple or Android. All you need to use it, you need to have a library card. So look up how to apply for it. You almost always have to do it in person to prove that you're a resident of the county or whatever that you're in. You sign up for your library card, which is free. Then you take your library card and it has a bunch of information on it. You type that information into your Libby app, and wham bam, you have access to ebooks and audiobooks immediately. It's very, very cool. Having access to that took away the barriers of cost, and it took away the barriers of having to have space for the books I was reading. So that is how I tripled, quadrupled the number of books I was reading a year. Dublin. No. Dublin, come here. You want to say hi? Come here. Hi, babe bear. I know, I love you too. Look at his nose. He's such a tall doggy. Yeah, it's okay. Mom's just shooting videos. Go to your sun puddle. Come on. Bye, baby. So that was what worked for me. That was the tool that took away my barriers to reading. And there's probably going to be a different thing for you. You have to figure out what your barriers are and then figure out a creative way of removing them. Lastly, 3, identify time in your day that you could spend reading. Because removing barriers is fine, but if you haven't actually figured out when you're going to read, you're going to struggle. I was allergic to reading anything but paper books for the longest time. I liked sort of the pageantry of curling up with a paper book and reading. I took a little bit of time to be honest with myself, and it just didn't happen very much. The stars had to frickin' align. Every planet had to eclipse for me to be in the mood to read in that way. So if I was honest with myself, that sort of reading, which I still do, is not going to be the bulk of how I read. I had to spend a little bit of time figuring out what was wasted time in my day that I could spend reading a book that I was currently not filling with anything constructive. First, that was the 30 minutes before bed that I spent doom scrolling on my phone, which A, wasn't great for my sleep, and B, never made me feel good about myself. So I changed that to reading time, and that helped a lot. It helped with my sleep. It helped me feel like I had a portion of my day which was just set aside for reading. It helped me wind down before going to bed. Having a Kindle helped a lot because then I didn't have to have the lights on to read. I wasn't disturbing my husband. And then I figured out I had a lot of upright time where I was just filling it with podcasts or nothing. This was time I spent walking the dog, driving to work, cooking, washing dishes, grocery shopping. And with getting access to a library, I figured out that audiobooks were a fantastic alternative to podcasts. Because podcasts for me often just feel like a lot of opinions. They feel like I'm just filling all my time with commentary. And alternating that with audiobooks, it felt like I was actually adding content that had some value. Also, small aside, I'm gonna shout here for a minute because I just really need to put this into the brain of somebody out there who's watching this. Audiobooks and ebooks are still reading. I've heard multiple people say, smart fucking people say things like, oh, audiobooks aren't really reading. Shove it up your ass. Yes, it fucking is. It's a book. The contents of the book are entering your brain through some of the many holes in your skull. Don't be a front hole bigot, okay? The side holes work just as well. And also, just because a story isn't written on a dead tree doesn't mean it's not a story. It's still reading. Books are books, and the way that you like to read them is the best way to read them. So please stop saying that audiobooks and ebooks are not real reading, because I will come for you. This might be hanker. I'm gonna have a snack. Please hold. It's dissipating. So there are a lot of videos out there on the internet with various ways to read more books. This is just mine and the things that work the best for me. There's nothing magical in here. It's honestly just a little bit of self-reflection. Why do I want to read more books? What is stopping me from reading more books? What time in my day could I use for reading instead? These are not hard questions, but if you don't ask them, you won't succeed. It's the reason why New Year's resolutions usually don't work. You have to plan a little bit ahead if you want to succeed in doing stuff. All right, I'm a little less hangry now. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm sorry I screamed. Really glad that I put the expression, don't be a front hole bigot, on the internet, so you're welcome for that. If you've recently started reading more books, I'd love to know what worked for you. And if you're making a goal of reading more books, let me know if any of these helped or if you have your own process. This is what worked for me. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching as usual. Please like and subscribe if you like my content. And I promise not to shout the words, don't be a front hole bigot, in my next video. So, bye.